You may not realize this, but over the last weekend, there was a Grand Prix over at Silverstone, and within said Grand Prix, there took place a little publicized racing incident with two of the top drivers in the world. As this news item wasn't at all taken up by the majority of the world's racing media, YouTube personalities, and just about anyone with a vague interest in cars, it's completely understandable that the subject matter was left thoroughly unexplored. That's why we're here today to provide our first on-the-scene breakdown of something you're completely not at all sick of hearing about already. Unfortunately, due to F1's strong conceptual relationship with the idea of intellectual property, I can't actually share any moving footage as part of this dissertation, so bear with me as I flex my considerable storytelling prowess as you use your imagination to fill in the blanks while watching this gorgeous, completely unrelated McLaren lap Silverstone. Lap 1 of the Grand Prix was a corker, as expected. However, the grand moment took place coming into Copse Corner, with Max Verstappen leading the race and Lewis Hamilton, after making a faking move on the outside, pushing through on the inside of the corner. The net effect of said move turned out less than ideal for Verstappen, sending him flying sideways into the barrier outside of Copse with a crash force of 51 Gs. Naturally, because this was such a run-of-the-mill incident, nobody at all thought it was a worthwhile talking point, and as a result, we haven't already had a list of Formula 1 analysts and media personalities dissecting and analysing it to no end. Therefore, with my impressive pedigree of no racing credentials or motorsport clout, I'll be taking on the hard job today of trying to work out why this happened and whose fault it might have been. Heading down the old start-stop straight, Hamilton got a strong tow from Verstappen. As the run into Copse is at such a high speed, Max was unable to entirely shut the door on the inside, as this would have greatly compromised his corner speed, which would have allowed Lewis to coast by on the outside. This partial close, Lewis promptly took as an opportunity to push down the inside. When it became apparent that Max was coming across to partially close the door, while still allowing more than the requisite amount of inside room for Hamilton's car, Hamilton partially backed out of the corner. He brakes early, but keeps his front axle alongside that of Max's car. Max, assuming that Hamilton has fully backed out, comes across to take the ideal line, makes contact with Hamilton's front left wheel, and goes spinning into the barrier at 51 Gs. When we take a look at this on the surface, it looks like a fairly textbook racing incident. Two very aggressive drivers at the top of their game with their own incentives to lead the Drivers' Championship getting overzealous going into a high-speed corner. Yet, if we look a little more closely and take historical data into account, it starts to take a slightly different shape. Note that going into the corner, Hamilton's car is exhibiting an understeer characteristic. In fact, at no stage is it pointing towards the apex. He's not even taking the compromised natural line left for him by Verstappen. He appears to be trying to widen the turn by pushing out into Verstappen on the outside, all the while having partially backed out of the corner. Again, you might think this was just a high-speed racing incident. Sure, if he hadn't done the exact same thing to Charles Leclerc later on in the race, and forced him wide off the track in order to take the lead. The repeating patterns are what take this outside of the realm of racing incidents and into the realm of strategic opportunism. So, which repeating patterns am I referring to? There appears to be a running tally between Lewis Hamilton's front left wheel and the rear right of a Red Bull car. Coincidentally, each time as he's trailing to a Red Bull driver in a race. Notwithstanding that someone could make a solid case for Lewis having ruined the confidence and subsequent career prospects for an up-and-coming young driver, he at the very least has an ominous pattern of being part of these near-identical racing incidents when he happens to be trailing in a race. The move on the inside of Copse is generally seen as being a very high-risk move by drivers, requiring special consideration by the overtaking car. Lewis's strategy, however, rested on the presumption that Max was going to back out, which, based on the start of their lap and their sprint race the day before, he clearly wasn't going to do. Combined with Lewis's ambitiously wide inside line, partial back out to a position where he couldn't be seen by Max, and car orientation not pointed toward the apex, this paints a somewhat different picture to the innocently perceived racing incident. There's a lot at stake for both drivers and both teams. There's an element here that can be attributed to the aggression of both drivers. Ultimately, if they weren't aggressive or type A in their driving, they wouldn't be the best in the world. Historically, the trait to do whatever it takes to win is almost a necessity for a world champion in any endeavour. I would just wonder in this case whether the fallout of said trait is starting to become just a little bit predictable and a little bit tedious for F1. Subscribe for more racing content, and I'll see you all in the next one.